As leaders, one of our jobs is to instigate and lead change, and one of the things we always have to deal with is resistance to that change. In this video, I'm going to show you a simple but extremely useful way to analyse that resistance to change and thereby measure the probability of success. In any reasonably complex change project, there is always a critical mass of people and groups who need to be wholly committed to the idea and providing the necessary time, money and effort for the change to occur. The number of people and the exact groups involved will change from project to project, but they can be identified, and I'll share some tips for that in a future video. Resistance to change is a normal part of the change process, and it's inevitable and unavoidable. So as a leader, what you need to do is work out where this resistance is and work out ways to overcome it. Now, resistance to change takes many forms, so you need to analyse each case and work out how best to overcome it and how to get the people or the groups behind the projects and fully committed to it. Of course, you should never just dismiss resistance out of hand. The reason might be quite valid, it might just be something that you've overlooked. Never be naive or arrogant enough to think that you've thought of everything. But assuming they haven't just dropped a huge spanner in the works, what can you do to analyse the resistance? Well, luckily there's a simple formula you can apply. But before I get to that, if you find this kind of content interesting, please do consider subscribing to the channel and ringing the notification bell. And if you find this video particularly useful, then please give it a like. Thank you. Richard Beckard and Reuben T. Harris came up with this formula in the 1980s. I've seen it written down in a couple of different ways, but I'm going to stick with the original from their book, which I'll link to in the description. And here it is. Don't worry, I promised you it was simple, and it really is. Let's take a closer look. In this formula, C stands for change. It tells us whether this change will be successful for this individual or group. Factors A, B and D must outweigh the perceived costs of change, X, for the change to occur. So what are A, B and D? Well, A is the level of dissatisfaction with the current status quo. Basically, how unhappy people are with the current system. This is usually the initial spark for the change project and can come from anywhere in the organisation. But broader changes are generally seen by higher management as they have a higher level overview of the organisation. Of course, organisations are often very complex systems, so not everyone may feel the need for change. So you may need to make the case to them to help them understand the dissatisfaction that's being felt and help give them a sense of urgency. B is the desirability of the proposed change or the proposed end state. This is all about developing and communicating the strategy and vision, two of Kotter's famous 8 steps. It's your job as the change leader to get buy-in for the change and make sure that everybody appreciates the short and long-term benefits so they can really get behind it. It's also quite likely that there may be some fear at play here, so it's really important that you help people understand their role not only during the project but at the organisation once the change has occurred. People are naturally more comfortable avoiding risks and maintaining the status quo. And finally, D is the practicality of the change, where we favour minimal disruption and risk and give them a higher score. Here we're asking, are the initial tasks and the overall roadmap realistic and practical? Now think about this. If you see a roadmap which has got crazy timescales and unrealistic estimates, how do you feel? Well, you probably just dismiss it out of hand. You'll assume it's a fantasy and so will everybody else. And suddenly, no one's taken the project seriously and all the motivation's gone. So people need to feel that the steps required to make the change are realistic and well thought out, and they've got all the support they need to make it a success. So we take these 3 factors and measure them against the perceived cost. If the cost is lower, then the project has a chance to succeed. If the cost is higher though, work needs to be done to lower either A, B or D. There is one thing to point out though, and that is that if either A, B or D are 0 or close to 0, then this resistance to change will be almost impossible to overcome. So you can see that this formula effectively describes what needs to be done in order for the change initiative to be successful. And from this, we can start to work on some of the narrower problem areas that we've identified. You can go through the formula with small groups or individuals, but it can also work across whole departments, divisions or organisations. You can do this by sending out a survey to everybody, asking them to give their scores for A, B, D and X, collating those and getting a score from across the entire organisation. Compare this score with the results from individuals or groups, and you'll start to identify the groups that are most resistant to change. And these are the groups that you're going to want to work with more closely to identify and really narrow down those areas. They'll likely be the people that are most impacted by the change or by the end result, or the people that are probably most involved in the implementation. So perhaps they might need more support than others, but they'll also be really good people to help you identify the risks and validate your assumptions and estimates. And it's definitely worthwhile repeating this activity periodically to see how people's perceptions change over time. You may observe, for example, that the perceptions of the practicality of the change alter as the project gets underway and people get more information about the work to be done. Please do let me know how you get on with this formula and share any tips you have for implementing it in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you soon.